Good morning, Team Brandy. It is Saturday, May 30th. I am here just to share with all of you. I know I already shared some reflections this past Tuesday on my Tuesday for the 12th related to my immediate thoughts and reactions, and quite honestly, I remain relatively speechless. Um, and this morning, I had a cry. It was unexpected. It was probably the persistent buildup of all of these experiences. And, the irony is, as you know, I am running for state representative to represent the Suffolk 12th District, the district in which I grew up, in which I still call home. And I have an amazing team that is supporting me and working with me. And I had two major candidate tasks to do today: phone bank to reach out to constituents, and call time to try to raise money in order to reach voters throughout the Suffolk 12. And so I woke up this morning feeling so great, to be honest, relative to everything that's happening. Attended a call via Zoom yesterday with the Boston branch of the NAACP, where folks were talking, creating solutions, sharing their reflections. Attended an event earlier this week with Bernadine Truth, where she convened what it is to be a Black woman here in Boston and really through in America and the world. But there are many folks from Boston, New England, and other places, even the Deep South, who joined in on the conversation. And again, despite all that was happening with George Floyd and the rightful rebellions and protests that are going on across the country, I was feeling okay. And so my morning ritual is I wake up, I do my prayers. Usually after I pray, I'll go ahead and look at the news, including social media. And so I had made it to that phase of my morning ritual. And I came across a social media post, and I had seen many posts related to what's happening in Minneapolis, what's going on in Atlanta, what's going on in uh, other parts of the country, other commentators, sharing their perspective and views on what's happening and why it's happening, and all of that I was fine with. And then I came across a post of Governor Cuomo of New York, and he so directly and clearly said how this is not new. And he started to read off the names of people who have died, been murdered, brutalized at the hands of the state or individuals for no other reason than their blackness. And the sound of their names, you'll see so many posts that say their name, but to hear it did something to me. To reflect on him reading those names, even now, the tears are coming back up. And I cried, y'all. I was laying in my bed and I just sobbed. Meanwhile, a good friend of mine who had her own encounter with law enforcement sent me a text in the midst of my cry, expressing how they believe they're experiencing PTSD from that experience, from this other lived trauma of people who look like us. And they wanted to talk, and I said, the best I can give you is a text message right now because I'm crying myself. And I thought about what I can do with all that I am experiencing and feeling, and I just felt compelled to do a Facebook Live. My team will tell you this is not my natural leaning or orientation, but I just felt compelled to share with you today. And so I'm in the midst of this cry, and I was supposed to go for a run this morning. I have an off and on relationship with running. It's a habit I picked up in 2016 when I realized my suits didn't fit me anymore, and I didn't have money to buy new suits. So I had to start running in order to fit them. And then I kind of stopped, and then I was diagnosed with a relatively severe medical condition in December, and I was like, well, I got to get back to running. So picked that up again in December and throughout the new year. And what's interesting about what I do when I run that many people don't know, and my mother is acutely aware of this, is there are three documents that I always carry with me when I run. It's my license, my bar card that shows I'm a member of the Massachusetts Bar, and my health insurance card. I don't like to leave home without those three documents. And what most people don't know is the reason why I carry those documents is, God forbid I were to have an encounter with law enforcement or with anyone else who thinks that I might be threatening or scary, something that as a Black woman, believe it or not, I've been called before in professional settings or by colleagues that are not that are not Black. Um, I want to be able to show I'm not who you think I am. I'm not the person you need to be afraid of. Look, I I went to law school, but we all know that degrees will not save you. Pedigree will not save you. Accolades and attainment, as we have seen with so many before, does not matter when there is fear because of the color of your skin. And so I know what it is to be a Black woman in America. I have had the great fortune to be in so many spaces with people who don't look like me. I know what it is to navigate this world, and to navigate it in a way that will lead to the American dream definition of success. Some call it code switching, some people call it bioculturation. Call it what you want. It is often a survival mechanism in order for people of color and Black people in particular to advance and move through this world, where we are well versed in what it is to be professional, yet we can still have our backyard barbecue conversations in the way that we communicate with one another. And it's a beautiful thing. I have not had the opportunity to have children yet. I'm still praying to God and holding out hope that that will happen for me one day. But just because I haven't experienced the birth process doesn't mean that I cannot empathize and feel deeply with all the mothers of brown children, particularly Black men, who every day probably live in fear of what will happen to their child. I am a godmother of four beautiful, brilliant, amazing children who all live in the metro Atlanta area now, two girls and two boys. I have been able to connect with my half siblings in recent years, and I developed strong relationships with my two nephews, who I always pray for them, that they can move through this world safely. And so I deeply empathize, and it resonates with me, the fear. I'll have conversations with my cousin, who, when I was growing up, was like my idol. Everything she did, I wanted to do. And she is the mother of two wonderful children, one of which is a teenage boy who is smart, athletic, gifted, a good human, always had a heart of service. And there are conversations that she has to have with her son and that her husband has with their son that other families don't have to worry about having. And that's just true for us in the Black community. And I certainly will not profess to know what it means to be a Black man in America. I can only imagine, I can only listen, I can only observe and see. What I do know is, and I wrote down talking points, y'all, just not like prepared, but when I was in the shower, I was thinking of all the things I wanted to say, and I didn't want to forget anything that was coming to mind, so I just tried to quickly jot them all down. I will never forget the first time I witnessed a dear friend of mine have an interaction with police, and it scared me. Um, and we were out of state. It was a group of us having a good time. And the next thing I knew, I saw out my peripheral that he was pushed up against the side of the brick building and in handcuffed, and my heart sank. There was a group of 7 or 8 of us at that time, and one of them was also an attorney, a male attorney, all of them big, muscular guys. And I was just like, oh Lord, like, I know the odds, I know the statistics. This might not go well. And so that guy was brooding. I can only imagine what he was processing as he's like observing, his friend be in handcuffs by the police officer. And I do what I always do. I had the opportunity to host my campaign kickoff in early May, and a friend who's known me since elementary school and has known my work and my character and supports my candidacy told stories that I didn't even remember from elementary school of when I spoke up and spoke out, and did immediate indecisive action. And in that moment, I did the exact same thing. I because I have navigated this world in so many spaces, I know what it's like, to work with, to talk to engage in conversation with people who aren't like me. Um, Believe it or not, when I was living in New Orleans for those 2 years, the church where I felt I got fed was predominantly white. And it was during the 2016 election. And it was hard for me to know that we could have this beautiful, diverse worship service on Sunday, for 90 minutes, 75 minutes, 90 minutes. And with what was happening at that time, Alton Sterling was right down the street in Baton Rouge from us, knowing what my fellow parishioners were probably thinking and believing. It was a challenge, but I share that to say I know what it's like to not necessarily agree with someone, but to be able to work towards a common goal. And so I sprang into action, and I immediately started to talk to the police officers. Officer, please, like, we're from out of town. This is why we're here, blah, 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 blah. Da-da-da. I don't know why I would do that. There are some people who would not speak up, and I have no judgment either way on what your personal choice might be. But thankfully, the situation was diffused. The officer said they were going to let him go. They did mention that they wanted the other friend who was kind of like brooding to calm down, but I did not address that. I just wanted my friend to be free and not end up in anybody's jail, but certainly not a Louisiana jail. And when he was released and the officers let him go, and it was like, no problem, let's try to go back to having our normal evening as scheduled, I started to punch him like a good 7 or 8 times. And I didn't even realize I was punching him until he said, "Can you stop punching me?" I said, "I'm so sorry. I was so scared." And not that he should have been the object of my like release of my fear in that moment, but it happened. And this is a friend who I love like closer than a brother. I would never want to see anything happen to them. And I share that because these protests, these rebellions, everything that we're seeing are all to get attention, to actually have people listen, and to do something about the situation. One of my favorite Spike Lee movies of all time, actually, is School Days. And the final scene of School Days, you see Lawrence Fishburne's character run out onto the quad, and he just screams, "Wake up! Wake up!" And that's what these protests and rebellions are trying to get us to do, is to not just wake up, but to do something, to take decisive action to ensure that this sentiment of anti-Blackness, that this belief that our lives don't matter, isn't a reality any further. When I decided to run for office after prayerful consideration and seeking wise counsel, I you're supposed to assemble your kitchen cabinet. This is like your team of people who can like advise you, guide you, coach you, pray for you, support you, like all of the things, as you embark on this endeavor. And so in March, early March, when I decided to run, and I had the kitchen cabinet come together. It was like the onset of Corona, so some of it was virtual. You know, we just talked about why I was running, and trying to come up with like slogans, or in this age of social media, hashtags. And Together for the 12th was one that just resonated with the kitchen cabinet, with myself, because for far too long, not only the Suffolk 12th, but our communities in general have just been pitted against one another. And I know, we all know, that there is strength in numbers, and that when we come together, greater things can be done than when we stand in isolation. I had the opportunity to attend the Boston NAACP's Racial Equity Summit a few weeks ago via Zoom, and I forget who said this in the opening. I forget the opener there, but I do remember Senator Diane Wilkerson co-signing to the statement, and basically it said, "There's so much work to be done that we're going to have to work with people that we disagree with." And that is so true, even more so 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks later from whenever that convening took place. We know that perfectionism does not exist for any of us. We are all flawed. Most of us are doing the best that we can. We all are experiencing things known and unknown. And I know that we want people to always agree with us 100%. And I know that that's actually not realistic. It's not achievable. Those can be your best friends, but it doesn't mean that we can't work together with folks who we might not have been allies with previously in order to move this work of equity forward. And in this particular case, I'm discussing racial equity. I saw someone post about Mark Lamont Hill, who sometimes says things that people would deem problematic. I know I've looked at him, given him a little side eye on occasions for the things that he has said, and but what he's saying right now is truth, unapologetically, and just because I may not have agreed with some of the things he said in the past, in this moment, it's not about the individual I, but the collective we. And so I just encourage every person, every advocate, every organization, if equity is truly your end goal, if justice is truly the name of the game that you are in, we cannot do business as usual, where we say, oh, you know what? I don't like so and so because of XYZ ABC. Or, well, they did this 1, 2, 3 in 1985. We don't have time for that. Lives are at stake, literally. Lives are at stake. So I just encourage all of us to let that go, find out where our commonalities are, and strategize and push the envelope to make sure that we actually achieve the equity and justice that we want to see in this world. The truth of the matter is, I've always spoken up. I've always been a person who was solutions oriented. So I will vent, I'll cry, I'll hash it out, and then it's like, okay, B, what are you going to do about it? And so I just say that to say we are not powerless in this moment. I shared in my campaign kickoffs my views on what I think could be done around racial justice in our world. I talked about some policy ideas. The work that I do now is so much about conscious inclusion and understanding your biases and how they show up in the workplace. And there's definitely things that can be done. I want to share with you what you all, what we collectively together can do in this moment. For we are not powerless. And we have the opportunity, no matter your race, no matter your creed, no matter the color of your skin, no matter where you're from, your religious background, there's work that all of us can do. My major starting off in college was social work, and I'll never forget that fall semester freshman year, and I'm sitting in like the intro class, ready to learn more. Can't believe I'm in college away from home, all the things that one experiences traditionally when going off to college. And I learned that social work had 3 levels: micro, meso, and macro. Micro is the individual clinician work that many of us are familiar with. Meso is organization change, and macro is system level change. When I heard those 3 tiers, I was immediately drawn to organizational and systems level change. That resonated with me. I was like, yes, this is where I fit into this world, this movement, and have since dedicated my life to organizational and systems level change. I share that because for anyone who is watching this video or watches it later, there are things that you individually can do in your individual lives, in your organization, and on the system level. When I stop recording this video, I'm going to put so many resources into the caption here. Individually, when you think about George Floyd and how there were 4 officers who observed what happened to him, so far only 1 has been charged. You can reach out to the DA via phone and email. It will both be provided to you in the caption, and ask for charges against the other 3 officers. That's something individually that you can do. Organizationally, whether you are the leader of your house or whether you have charge over people in the workplace, you can think about, when I see and observe systematic oppression, anti-Blackness, from whatever seemingly limited positional power or great grand positional or identity-based power that I have, Here's what I'm going to do to try to ameliorate the situation. Here's what I'm going to do to stand. You can choose your word of unity, whether it's allyship, co-conspirator, accomplice, whatever floats your boat. And think about the policies and the choices on a organizational level, whether it's your household or your employment, that you can do. And then there's systems level change. No matter where you are, no matter what town or city you might be in, no matter what state you're in, your elected officials are accountable to you. Anyone who knows me knows two things about me. I speak up all the time, sometimes too much, and I believe in accountability. It's a two-way street. Folks need to be held accountable. So you can reach out to your elected officials and say, hey, I want to see policies in place that prohibit law enforcement use of these practices. Here in the Commonwealth, there was a resolve that has been moving through the State House to have a commission examine the practices of what are called peace officers, law enforcement, and what they do. For those of us in Massachusetts, we can reach out to our elected officials and make that request that be made, that passes swiftly. We can also reach out to Governor Baker and let him know that this is an issue that we want to see quick action on. We are not powerless. We are truly in this together. I also know that depending on the skin you're in, you just might need a breather, might need some self-care. You might need to find words of unity. There is an event 12:30 to 1:30 virtually today. For those of us who are here in Boston, there is a march tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. on Sunday. May 31st? Yes. Sunday, May 31st, march from Dudley to the State House. The dress code is all black. I will be there. You can be there too. Be sure to wear your mask though. We are still in the midst of a pandemic and we are not trying to have our community get more sick from this disease. So please be sure to wear a mask. And we'll march to the State House and make our demands known. There is just so much opportunity. And for those who are channeling hurt, despair, anger, frustration, take the time that you need. It's okay to not be okay. And when you're ready, when you feel like you want to do something or that you have the unction to do something, find a way to plug in that's meaningful for you. For all of those who are watching this who might not identify as Black, there is so much work for you to be done, for you to do in this, to be done. There's so much power that's associated with your identity that you might not even recognize. Those conversations that need to happen at the kitchen table, the education that you provide your children, even as minuscule as the types of books you purchase for your children or expose them to so they see people who don't look like them. I saw this social media post last night that talked about the progression of racial preference in children. And it said that by age 4, white children show a strong preference for spending time with other white children, whereas African American children show no preference at all. 4 years old. It starts young and it starts early, and there are things that we can all do in order to make a change. I can't believe I've been talking to you all for 24 minutes, so I'm going to end this live now. I'll be sure to update the caption with all the resources, the places you can donate. There's a bail fund for those who are in the Twin Cities and have been arrested for their protests. You can donate to that. There's work that we can all do. We don't have to feel hopeless and powerless, and the time is now. And I truly believe that if we come together and we think about this common goal of eradicating racial inequity and the brutalization and murder of Black bodies in this country, which has such a long history, we truly can overcome this. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me to speak this, because I think it was my own cathartic way as I processed the trauma of being Black in America day in and day out, related to this pandemic, personal lived experiences, what I see with the murder of Black bodies. And so I just thank you for your time, for this space, and I hope you'll join me and do something. And I hope you have a great day.